Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, the residence branding company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. We've got some new items up there for you to order and to represent with. This episode, we're talking straight up football. We've got Packers versus Cardinals this weekend, so let's jump right into it. Key matchups, predictions for the Pack going up against the Cardinals. Let's break it down looking at this matchup. First, let's start off with the Cardinals and their offense. Okay, let's take a look at the Cardinals and their offense. Right now, if you look at it from a total offensive standpoint, we're looking at, yards per game. Okay? Cardinals are about middle of the pack in the NFL. Cardinals are about middle of the pack. They're averaging 338 yards per game. To put this in perspective here a little bit, Green Bay is the fourth highest team in the National Football League with 392.6 yards per game. So they got the fourth highest. That's still pretty darn impressive when you had two games where you weren't pretty much throwing the football with Malik Willis. So the fact that Green Bay is still averaging 392.6, which is the fourth highest, I think is pretty impressive. The three teams ahead of them is Baltimore, 447.6. Well, you got Lamar and Derrick Henry there. San Francisco and Detroit. Washington is behind. Actually, Green Bay and Washington are tied 392.6. So when you break it down a little bit further, you look at the passing yards. Arizona's about bottom third of the league. They're averaging about 181.6 yards through the air, which is actually tied with the Buffalo Bills, which is kind of interesting with Josh Allen and such over there. But they're bottom third. Green Bay, 2, 4, 6, 8. They're 10th highest in passing yards, 227.8 yards per contest. Green Bay, we know, is third highest in rushing yards per game, 164.8. And for the Cardinals here, this is where they've kind of made their money with the offensive game has been on the ground. They are the fifth highest team in the National Football Game, averaging 156.4 yards per game. And a lot of that has to do with a couple players. One, James Conner. I feel like James Conner has been around for a long time. I don't know why. He was drafted in 2017, which, 7 years ago, and maybe for a running back, that's kind of fairly long. But I feel like James Conner's been around for almost forever, former Pittsburgh running back, and kind of carving out a nice career the last few years with the Cardinals here. But James Conner has the seventh most rushing yards in the league. He has 379 yards. He is averaging 4.6 yards per carry and has 3 touchdowns. To put it in perspective, Josh Jacobs is still the fourth highest rusher in the league, 402 yards on the ground. But James Conner has been a big focal point, obviously, with this offense for the Cardinals, with running the football. But also, when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray on your squad, Kyler Murray, he's 20th in the league in passing yards at 972. But he's been efficient in passing, 7 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. His completion percentage has been 68.1%. That's been pretty darn solid over there. But you also have to factor in the rushing yards when it comes to Kyler Murray. And that's where he can break you. And that's where he can make things really difficult on you. Looking at his rushing yards this year, 247 yards. 247 yards on the ground rushing. If we were to put him, actually, he's probably on here, 247. Yeah, so Kyler Murray is 23rd in the league in rushing yards. Okay? 23rd in the league in rushing yards. That's more than Tony Pollard from the Tennessee Titans. That's more than Travis Etienne from the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's more than Kenneth Walker from Seattle. It's not the highest quarterback with rushing yards. Lamar Jackson's the top 10 rusher. In fact, he's got the 8th most rushing yards in the league. And then you got Jaden Daniels on there at 16. But you look at Kyler Murray and you got to factor in what he can do with his legs, what he can do in the running game. And that's when you've got James Conner who's having success and Kyler Murray who's having success running the football. You got to be on your toes. You got to be paying attention there. Receiving wise, when you look at it, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy that everybody kind of knows. The rookie wide receiver from Ohio State. Obviously, we have seen him quite a bit. If you are a Badgers fan or Gophers fan, whatever, from Big Ten action, right? And Marvin Harrison Jr. is leading the team in receiving yards with 279. You also got Michael Wilson on there, who's got 216 receiving yards. Trey McBride, their tight end, 175. But Marvin Harrison Jr. also has 4 touchdowns. Had that big game just, week 2 of this season, where I know a lot of those numbers, too, come from that game against the Rams. Yeah, it was week 2 against the Rams when they put up 41 against them. He had 4 catches on 8 targets for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. But against Detroit, and yeah, when you kind of look at it against Detroit after that, he had 64 yards and a touchdown, 45 yards and a touchdown against Washington. And then last week against San Francisco, 2 catches, 36. So, yeah, I understand a lot of those numbers that Marvin Harrison Jr. put up came from one game. But he's still a dangerous threat. Even though he's a rookie, he's still a dangerous threat over there. Defensively for the Cardinals now, when we take a look at where they kind of stand up or compare, if you will, to the rest of the NFL in terms of defense. Total defense, again, yards given up per game, they're in the bottom third. In fact, the teams, there's only a handful of teams that have given up more yards defensively than the Cardinals. It's the Bengals, it's the Eagles, it's the Panthers, it's the Rams, it's the Bucks, it's the Jags, and the Colts. Green Bay's only just a few spots ahead, though. Green Bay has given up 345.8 yards per game. Arizona, 360.6. If we break it down, passing yards, given up through the air, Arizona's been better than Green Bay. Arizona's about middle of the pack. Okay, they've allowed 212.8 yards through the air. Green Bay, 231.6. Okay, this actually kind of surprised me a little bit. But Green Bay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11th best rushing defense. I'm going to be honest, that kind of surprised me a little bit. They're allowing 114 on the ground. But I was like, all right, 11th? I would have thought maybe in the 20s. But that's what it is right now. Arizona, this is where they've struggled defensively in stopping the run. Okay? Just like last week, Packers going up against a defensive unit that has struggled against the run. But the Rams did a pretty good job last week of containing the run, going up against Josh Jacobs and such. But Arizona this year has given up or has allowed 147.8 yards on the ground. So a lot like last week, that would tell you, man, is this a game for Josh Jacobs? Is this a game for him to get the rock quite a bit? Obviously, a lot's going to depend on the flow of the game. If Green Bay's playing ahead, if they're controlling the clock and they don't got to play a little behind. But here's a nugget, and this is from Pro Football Focus, where if you got a Josh Jacobs in your fantasy lineup, maybe you're feeling pretty good. So Josh Jacobs this year has 304 rushing yards after contact this season. That's third best among running backs. The Cardinals defense ranks 29th in yards after contact allowed to running backs. All right, so you've got one of the best running backs in the National Football League in terms of yards after contact, going up against one of the worst rushing defenses in terms of allowing yards after contact. So it would seem like, okay, that, again, on the surface, huge advantage to Green Bay, huge advantage to Josh Jacobs. That would be a key to victory, in my opinion. Getting Josh Jacobs going here and feeding him the ball. Again, a lot is going to depend on how the flow of the game is going to go in this thing. Is Green Bay playing from behind? Are they able to win on the early downs? Put themselves into short manageable situations, winning on first down, right? Maybe if, you get into a 2nd and 5 or get into that 3rd and 1, those winnable downs, those short situations. That's what Green Bay's got to do to maintain the running game and have success in the running game, is not having quick 3 and outs, kind of what they did last week against the Rams, not having those short drives, winning time of possession, but also defensively, not allowing Arizona to kind of do the same thing, not allowing Arizona's offense to have long sustained drives, getting Arizona's offense off the field after 3rd down, not allowing, 3rd and short and 3rd in those manageable downs. Packers defense can't do that either. But you look at this and this has got to be a Josh Jacobs game. And you look at his last 3 games, kind of waiting for another Colts type of performance, right? Where he had 32 carries for $151. Since then, Tennessee was 14 carries for 43, Minnesota 9 carries for 51, and then against the Rams, who have the worst rushing defense, 19 carries for 73 yards. So I'm looking for a Josh Jacobs type of game. But again, it's going to depend on the flow, and it's going to depend on if Green Bay can win those early downs and have success on early downs so they can continue to run the football and defensively keeping Arizona's offense off the field and not allowing them to not allow, or Green Bay not playing from behind. Another key to victory, another key matchup going on the defensive side here for Green Bay. And, it's going to be, can they stop the run? They did a really good job in the first 2 weeks of the season defensively in containing Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson, 2 mobile quarterbacks. They did a really good job at that, of containing those 2 quarterbacks, especially earlier on in the game, from not extending plays, from not stepping up in the pocket, hitting the edge, and really beating them with their legs. Green Bay's defense did a good job of doing that contained kind of pass rush and such. And they got to do the same against Kyler Murray this weekend. They got to be able to have those disciplined pass rush, those stay in their lanes, kind of collapse that pocket around him. Now, Kyler Murray's a little bit more, he's definitely smaller than Anthony Richardson. Height-wise, I think they're about the same with Jalen Hurts, but Jalen Hurts is a little bit bigger. Kyler Murray can squeak through some of those little lanes and little holes. It might be a little bit more difficult to 100% contain Kyler Murray from scrambling around and trying to find some of those lanes to pick up some yards using his legs. But that defensive front, those linemen, those down linemen have to do a good job of being disciplined in their lanes. And I don't think this is a game where we really have to focus on sack numbers or anything like that. Now, it's not to say you don't want any pressure. You want pressure. You want pressure, and you want to make Kyler Murray nervous, have some happy feet in that pocket. And, yeah, you want to get some pressure and get some quarterback hits on him. But it's all you don't want to be overly aggressive where you're allowing him to have this wide open lane on the left side, right side, in the middle to where he can scamper for 15 yards. So you want to get that contained pressure, that disciplined pressure on Kyler Murray. Make him nervous there, but, again, not allowing him to pick up those first downs. And also, to slow down James Conner, who's having a solid season so far. So the running game is James Conner and Kyler Murray. That's kind of where they're at with these two. Can you slow those guys down? Can that defensive line from Green Bay stop the run, clog up those lanes? And then, that's where the second level then of that defense is another key here is, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, Eric Wilson, Edrin Cooper. Those guys are those, especially if Kyler Murray is going to be able to scramble. Do they play a little quarterback spy? I'm kind of curious to see, if we were doing some key players or players to watch. A couple players for me to watch might be the two rookie safeties in this, Javon Bullard and Evan Williams. I'm kind of curious to see if they play Javon Bullard a little bit more in that box towards the line of scrimmage to kind of help out containing Kyler Murray, getting after Kyler Murray, maybe playing a little quarterback spy in that aspect. And Evan Williams, to me we saw his speed and his timing and his reaction speed on display, full display last week against the Rams. So I'm very curious to see if Jeff Hafley utilizes those guys more in trying to slow down Kyler Murray and James Conner in their legs, especially maybe a Javon Bullard playing more in the box and playing more towards the line of scrimmage to kind of help out with that. But there's no question this is a game, too, for Quay Walker to show off his athleticism sideline to sideline. Same for Edrin Cooper. Same for Isaiah McDuffie and the rest of those linebackers. Don't allow Kyler Murray and James Conner to reach past those second levels, to reach the second, third levels of your defense. Keep them in front of you. So this is a test, I think, for this defense, for this Jeff Hafley defense, for this Packers defense, defensive front. Can you slow down the run? Can you have that disciplined yet consistent pressure on the line where you're collapsing the pocket and you're stopping the run? And, going back to the Packers offense, I think, for the next couple weeks, at least the next few weeks, we're going to keep eyes on Jordan Love to see improvement. You look at some of the numbers, and I know he's missed a couple of games, and he's only got 3 games into this thing. But I still, like I said earlier in the week, I think it's fair to say that we want to see a little bit better play from Jordan Love. And it's not to say he's been awful, and he's been dealt with some drops from his receivers. There's no question about it. But there's been some poor play from Love, whether it's still rust and such. I don't know. And I'm not panicking about Jordan Love by any means. But it's fair to say, all right, There's room for improvement. There's room to get better. So I think we're going to kind of keep tabs on that every week going in here. But also, the big thing out there is what's the reaction going to be like or what's the game plan going to be like? You throw in Romeo Doubs into that equation. What's that going to look like? But outside of all that, I'm just kind of curious too. How do they continue to get Jayden Reed the football, and how do they continue to keep Jayden Reed kind of that Swiss Army knife, versatile playmaker within this offense? The different ways to keep him a dangerous threat on the offensive side. That's another thing that I'm kind of excited about to see, or maybe curious is the best word, is to see how they can continue to get him involved and really affect games out there too. And then one more, on the defensive side here too, we know Green Bay, turnover machines so far this year on the defensive side. I know everybody's going to be wondering, can Xavier McKinney get another pick? Is he going to be able to go out there and get that? And you got to give credit to Kyler Murray, because he's been pretty darn good with the football. He's only got 2 interceptions. He's only got 2 interceptions this year. So can that ball hawking secondary force some turnovers against Kyler Murray? Are they going to be able to do that? And a lot is going to depend on if they can have that disciplined pressure, collapsing the pocket there a little bit, getting him off his mark, not allowing him to pick up first downs using his legs and such. I was looking at some of the defensive numbers here. Jordan, we gotta add Jordan Love and Malik Willis, but Jordan Love and Malik Willis combined have been sacked 8 times. Kyler Murray, even though with his legs and such, he has been sacked 11 times this year. So it's not impossible. It's not impossible to get after him and get him down. It's not. It's just that disciplined pressure where you have to collapse the pocket overall. And you look at Arizona in terms of them getting after the quarterback. As a team, they've got 11 sacks. And if you want to compare that to Green Bay's actually got more. Team-wise, Green Bay's got 16 sacks. 16 sacks. One of their sack leaders actually is former Packer Chris Barnes, that linebacker, who's got 2. So I think this is Green Bay should be able to keep Jordan Love pretty clean. His jersey should be pretty clean. They should be able to keep him upright. But if they can get that running game going with Josh Jacobs, if they can establish that run with Josh Jacobs, where he's averaging 4 or 5 yards per carry, 5.5 yards per carry, where it's like you're picking up a few, and he's really taking advantage of that yards after contact stat that we just said a little bit earlier. You open up that play action game. It's bread and butter to Jayden Reed. Bread and butter to some, maybe if tough. Hopefully Tucker Kraft's able to play. It's bread and butter to Tucker Kraft, Dontavian Wicks. Hopefully the dropsies kind of behind him, and we'll see about Christian Watson if he's out there too. The offense is, when Christian Watson is out there, he's one of those players that he affects the overall offense, even if he's not putting up big numbers. Just his presence out there. We know about the speed. We know about the size and his ability to top off the defense. The guy is a pretty darn good run blocker too. So the offense, the Packers offense, is quite a bit different when he's out there or when he's not out there. I don't know if he's going to be out there this weekend, but if he is, that gives you more opportunities. That opens up things a whole lot more too. We know Romeo's going to be out there. But if they can get that running game going and that play action working, he should be able to get some opportunities as well, especially over the middle of the field. What are some players to watch? I think for me, players to watch for this game, I mentioned a couple of them. I think Javon Bullard is going to be a guy. Evan Williams. I'm going to go those two on the defensive side. You could say the defensive line like Kenny Clark and Rashawn Gary, and you'd be right. We'll go a little bit of a different direction here because I think we're going to see Javon Bullard play a little bit more in the box and towards the line of scrimmage, and then Evan Williams playing more of that deep safety to help out Xavier McKinney and such, or playing a little bit more of the middle of the field. And then offensively, the player to watch, I think, is got to be Josh Jacobs. And that running attack. Is Green Bay going to feed the rock to number 8? And can he take advantage of that yards after contact stat? For a prediction in the game, I am going to go Packers 30, Cardinals 20. 30-20, Packers get their 4th victory of the season. And that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Again, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast for free. And if you could, please take a few seconds, if you haven't, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review. Write out just a couple sentences, few words. That way others can find the podcast. That's how the internet warlords work out there. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.